Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to welcome Cara Castronuova. She's a White House press corps reporter. She is a champion boxer. She's fighting it out in the press room with CNN and CBS to find answers to questions that they don't have the balls to ask. She's asking about what happened during the vaccine mandates, who caused some of these great fiascos. She's asking about January 6th. She's part of the new media that has never been able to get into the White House briefing room, and she's going to take us inside. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very lucky to have Cara Castronuova here, White House reporter and longtime advocate for the truth. She has been fighting the good fight. She has kind of been on the right side of history with vaccine mandates and as we're seeing now with January 6th for a long time, and has kind of fought and clawed her way into the White House. So she is part of the new media and is asking the tough questions at a time when they need to be asked. And also, from a personal note, I have to thank Cara because, as many of you know, I was infamously a January 6th defendant, and she was there, supported me, and was always a phone call away and was trying to help get part of the story out, the truth out, when that wasn't a cool thing to do. And I am very grateful for that, Cara. So thank you very, very much for being here, and thank you for all you've done for me personally.
No problem. And then congratulations on your pardon. And I was so happy and relieved when the majority of the J6ers were pardoned. That was something that I was fighting for, like you mentioned, for a long time. So being here at the White House has been pretty surreal because obviously for the past 4 years, I was sort of a canceled person because of the work that I was doing, and getting to sit on the White House lawn and ask questions. And sometimes those questions are about January 6th and keeping that conversation alive. So something like that never happens again, where people are politically persecuted, where the government essentially set up a lot of people, for disaster. There's a new January 6th committee coming, and we definitely want to highlight that here at the White House with our coverage. So a lot of it's been a real blessing, Brady.
Yeah. So it's when you talk about surreal, it's wild to me that you are in the press room when you were treated like a pariah, and you had such difficulty getting your stories out, and now you're front row and center, and you're shoulder to shoulder with some of the people that probably tried to excommunicate you from the news media. What's it been like being there amongst some of the harshest critics of your work?
It's interesting. They actually did some smear pieces at the beginning because the mainstream media was having a hard time knowing that there were all of these different organizations with different opinions, which never was the case here at the White House. I mean, you had Fox News, I guess, but other than that, the majority of the mainstream media is leftist. So at the beginning, they did a bunch of, I think the New York Times did a horrible hit piece on all the new journalists. They sort of put our photos up as if they were mugshots, sort of saying, why are these people even here? There was some stuff, I believe, in Politico. CNN tried to paint us as quote unquote MAGA journalists when we are actually just fair and tell the truth. But telling the truth, I guess, is a bad thing in the present day and age. They're getting used to it. I do feel like they're starting to treat us with a lot more respect. But at the beginning, it was really difficult being a new quote unquote new media person, because like you mentioned, this has been a very, getting into the White House press pool is something that a lot of people have wanted to do, and it's something that's difficult to do. But this administration has been open to what they call new media, realizing that people now get their news from the internet. They get their news from apps. They get their news from X. They don't trust the mainstream media in the same way that they did before, because the mainstream media has just lied so much to the American people, and people are fed up. So this White House really just embraces new media. And I think that hopefully the White House Correspondents Association, which I actually joined, will start really respecting new media as well as a new form of where people get their news from. And a lot of those new media companies are like Lindell TV, where I am the White House correspondent for. That's LindellTV.com if anyone wants to follow, but also writing for the Gateway Pundit. These are two organizations, like you mentioned, that have been labeled, misinformation or far right extremists or whatever it is that they put labels on you to discredit you. So it's been a fight, and it's definitely been a battle, and we have to fight for respect here. We have to even just fight for standing ground on the lawn sometimes, and fight for our spot in the cabinet room. It's literally a fight, and sometimes it gets really vicious here, where people start pushing and shoving each other. People do try to act with class but it gets really to a point sometimes where I've seen people almost getting to fistfights in the press pool because everybody wants to get close to the president. Everybody wants to get the questions in. So it is sort of like the Hunger Games here to a certain extent, but everybody does try to behave themselves. So it's been really interesting to say the least.
What was it like, just on a personal note, when you're trying your those first few press briefings, when you were standing next to them? What was that? What was that like for you? What to be in there? You're standing in front of the president. What was that like?
Surreal. And just Friday, I asked Zelensky of Ukraine, President Zelensky, a question, and I was literally like 2 feet away from him. Like he was looking, they had him positioned where the media was behind him. So we had to kind of look up, and I was like the reporter right here, which was surreal because this is Zelensky. Everybody's talking about the Ukraine-Russia war. And I asked him a very viral question. And right across from me was President Trump across the table. Then right next to him, JD Vance. And then there's Pete Hegseth. And then there's Marco Rubio. And I'm like, is this real? I'm pinching myself because, as you know, I was canceled, like you mentioned, for so long. So I know that some of the questions I ask sometimes are things that the mainstream media wouldn't ask. I've seen them sometimes kind of look appalled or maybe even roll their eyes, especially when we talk about the vaccines. That's still a sore spot, I think, for a lot of people in the mainstream media. And on certain days when it's raining, like today, it's beautiful out, so I'm outside on the lawn. We'll be inside the briefing room and we'll do these hits from the briefing room. And everybody's sort of sitting in those chairs watching each other do the hits. And, if you speak ill of the vaccine or stuff like that, or talk about the Maha stuff, that's, I think, the biggest trigger point for a lot of people in the mainstream media, because they're obviously owned by Big Pharma. And whether it's they're not allowed to say it and they wish they could, or they completely are appalled and disagree with you and think you're abhorrent, the reactions, especially at the beginning, are priceless. I think they're getting used to it, like I said. But at the beginning, I saw people's eyes literally bugging out of their heads with some of the stuff that was coming out of my mouth. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting.
Yeah. So what I've seen on some of it is that if the new media ask a question, now it seems like it helps shape the story a little bit, because now there's some countering. Now that it seems like that the legacy media now feels like they have to counter some of the questions that you guys are asking.
Right. And it's absurd because their questions are terrible. For example, I think it was the Daily Beast that wrote an article about my question on Zelensky. They said I had the nerve to interrupt Zelensky when they interrupt President Trump and are rude to him all the time. And this is the president of our own country. So obviously they have more respect for Zelensky of a foreign country. And they were appalled that I told him, she said to his face, that we need our tomahawks too. When you have leftist journalists constantly going at the president, against President Trump, interrupting him, yelling at him, lecturing him. So it's just really hypocritical, but they do feel like they need to reshape the narrative. They'll take your question, they'll pick it apart. They'll call you, they'll say you're kissing up to President Trump with your questions. I asked President Trump one question. It still haunts me to this day, but the way they twisted it, which was he working out with Bobby Kennedy? Which was supposed to be a joke, Brady. And that question went so viral. Every late night host made fun of me for it. It was the day of his physical, President Trump's physical. And every other news person in there was, being really negative with their questioning about his physical health and trying to make it seem like he wasn't doing so well. So sort of Caroline was wrapping up the briefing, and I got the last question, and I was sort of joking around, playing off the person next to me. Well, President Trump looks great. Is he working out with Bobby Kennedy? Which he has lost a lot of weight. And these are facts. Like, I see him every day. He lost weight. I think it's inspirational to the elderly generation, like relatives of mine that feel like they can't lose weight at the age that they're at or get healthy. And it was a legitimate question, I thought, but it still haunts me to this day. I've asked so many questions since then about January 6th, about Antifa, about foreign wars, about Ukraine, about Venezuela, about so many different things, about the economy. But that question is the one that anytime they write a hit piece on me, they will point to that question and say that I was kissing up to the president and that I'm a MAGA journalist, when I have asked tough questions before. So things get misconstrued, obviously. And again, it's, I think, a readjustment period for media in general. And that goes for the White House as well.
But there's been 12 of the last 16 years when there was no questions or softball questions only, and that was the theme of the day. I mean, we can't say that there was an honest, there was an honest questioning with sincere intent to discover the truth between the Obama White House and the Biden White House. So I think that's funny that they're so aghast at a softball question when that's what we've grown accustomed to. I mean, that is what the White House press corps has been as long as Trump hasn't been in office. So I find that a little bit ironic. So right now, what are you? I mean, I've known you for a while, and you are a very hungry individual. I think that you pursue your work almost, you're a slave to it. And I know that you're one that works late and wakes up with like you're shot out of a cannon. So what are you after right now? What is driving you?
A few things, but one of them, which obviously you should be interested in, is the new J6 committee. And I'm trying to schedule an appointment with Representative Louder-Milka right now because of the shutdown. It's difficult because a lot of Congress members aren't here. They're over. He's in Georgia right now. So when he gets back from Georgia, I do want to interview him, Jim Jordan, and others that are involved with this committee, and really highlight that stuff here at the White House. Kind of ask questions about that here. So much stuff is supposed to come out with this new committee, and hopefully they could pull it off. They have way more funding than they did last time around when they were doing some hearings on January 6th. A lot of stuff is supposed to come out about the pipe bombs, which I'm interested in. I am going to hopefully be presenting a lot of information as a journalist that they can use when it comes to Roseanne Boylan's death, when it comes to police brutality that day. As you know, it was 4 years of investigative journalists, a lot of citizen journalists as well, that were really fighting to get the truth out. And we have so much information to share that could really save the government a lot of money, substantiated, documented stuff. I'm sure you have stuff, Brady, that you could share as well. So the J6 committee is something that is supposed to be happening this fall. There's no scheduled date for that, but hopefully, we'll get a date on that soon and inform you when that is. But that's something I really would like to report on and assist with, getting the truth out there, getting press on that, because I think it would really shock America to hear some of the things that this committee is going to come out with, and they'll realize that they were lied to for a long time. And that includes Republicans. I think a lot of Republicans are still afraid of the subject matter.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately,
It's
it's very sad.
sacrilege. Holy cow.
So maybe that will be turned on its head, and I think it will. And it's important that people tune into that, and that the news covers it. And we hope that they do. We hope that the mainstream media will cover it, because sadly, there are people in certain age brackets that still only get their news from these news
Legacy.
networks, right? Legacy media. Well, a lot of people are not. Some people still do. So hopefully they cover it, but a lot of stuff will be coming out of that. So I'm focused on that and other things as well. But I know that's an important subject to you to finally get the truth out on January 6th.
Yeah, I want to talk about this for a second. A lot of people don't know, but this is with the police in general, and also specifically on January 6th. What happens a lot in police brutality situations is, and I saw this on January 6th firsthand, is when they kick the shit out of a guy, they charge the guy with assault on a police officer. And I saw them do that to my co-defendant and other people on January 6th. And we had situations as even as ridiculous as when the crowd is pushing and a person made contact with a police shield, they were charged with assault on a police officer. So what is I guess now that you're bringing all this forward, is there receptivity on the part of the Republicans to investigate this in an honest manner?
I think the brave ones will, and I think if they bring this stuff forward, then the other Republicans will realize there's nothing to be afraid of, because there's not, there's a lot of use of force experts that I have that are writing affidavits right now. Hopefully they will be helpful to the January 6th committee. I'll probably publish those on the Gateway Pundit. But real law enforcement officials who say that so many protocols were broken that day, that there were crimes. There's one, and he's a very, very, very notable person that has been admitted into various courts around the country as a use of force expert, saying that Lila Morris committed crimes, that the police around her and the police that day committed crimes, that they
when she beat Roseanne Boylan.
when she beat Roseanne Boylan. That is 100% against police protocol to beat somebody that's laying in a prone position, and strike them with something that, not even using her baton. She used a stick. Like in the police protocol, this person has written police protocol. You should only use your baton, and obviously you should never strike a person that's laying on the ground. Obviously, the people that were shooting those munitions, the quote unquote less than lethal munitions that might have played a part in Roseanne Boylan's death. There's never been an investigation. She was covered in gas. She was covered in these noxious gases to the point where she was slippery on the floor. So many other people were as well. She was breathing in all of these horrible, noxious chemical sprays. So there's been videos since of officers shooting them 10 feet away from her, which is obviously not within the guidebooks of how to use these munitions. She got hit in the head with a pepper ball from about 8 feet away. So all of these things are obviously not the way that the cops are supposed to conduct themselves, and it's illegal behavior, and it's something that they should be charged for. Somebody died, unfortunately. She represented a lot of people that day because a lot of people were beaten. A lot of people were their constitutional rights were violated. Their civil rights were violated when they were sprayed with these gases. You see leftist protests, and if people get sprayed with these things, they sue the government and they win a lot of money. So it's not the same way when it comes to January 6th for some reason. And I do think that a jury will be more receptive this time around. I do think that a lot of the lies about January 6th are slowly being exposed. And I do think that if one of these officers are charged here in Washington, D.C., there is a shot. Because I guess that you could say that allegedly 92% of the people here voted Democrat. So I guess that a lot of Democrats, as you know, aren't the biggest fans of police. So maybe they'll say, okay, well, this police officer acted out of line, and they'll actually be fair in this case, even though it was against a Trump supporter. So
Yeah,
hopefully
so
there will be a
let's
criminal indictment.
let's just kind of catch people up on what the narrative was around Roseanne Boylan. So Roseanne Boylan was near the Lower West Tunnel, right? And she was she collapsed on the ground. She was kind of squished, and the police beat her, and she ended up succumbing to her injuries and passed away. And the initial story was that this drug addict had died as a drug overdose, was
Right.
the very first story. And then over time, video was uncovered, and some of that was very difficult to obtain. And now that it's clear that that was not the case.
Right, exactly. The government actually released to the news that she died of a drug overdose. Her parents had to get a second autopsy report, and that was even a preliminary one because that was years ago after a lot of the stuff came out to just show that their daughter didn't die of a drug overdose. And what really happened, like you mentioned, she got hit with a pepper ball. The police induced a trampling because they all started pushing people on top of each other. This is all on video now. They started shooting gas canisters out where people started panicking, and that would include cops who started pushing Trump supporters. There was a pileup on Roseanne Boylan. So I think a combination of the gases that they shot out, the pepper ball that hit her and put her at the bottom of that pile, and then when the pile finally cleared, police officer Lila Morris started beating her viciously with a stick. That wasn't even a baton. It was a stick that she picked up. And then after that, cops completely neglected her. They wouldn't perform CPR on her, even though many Trump supporters begged and pleaded. Finally, they drug her in by her foot into the back of the Capitol, and they tried to do CPR on her. They tried to use a defibrillator that they broke. They couldn't even figure out how to use it. So basically this woman is laying there, and from what I understand, there was still a pulse. At that point she was probably losing a lot of the blood to her brain, that maybe she could have been saved at that point, maybe not. Again, there's never been an investigation, but ultimately she died, and she was pronounced dead when she was taken to George Washington Hospital. And what was released by the coroner's office here in DC was that she overdosed, on the Capitol steps, and it was a lie. And that lie still exists on the internet. It's still on Wikipedia. It's the New York Times and all these other organizations have never corrected themselves. And it's very unfortunate. So hopefully people will see that story and they're going to say to themselves, how come we never knew a second woman died that day by police? at the hands of police, a culmination of everything that so many people experienced that day. And maybe they'll realize that they were lied to on so many other levels and have sympathy for this woman who was a peaceful protester, literally just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think that will change a lot of the narrative around January 6th. When people hear her story, her family wants to speak out, her friends want to speak out. They feel like it's really unfair that after 5 years, a lot of people think that Ashley Babbitt is the only person that died that day, and it's not true. Four and maybe even five people that died that day, and that does not include that police officer. I'm talking about Trump supporters.
So are you learning anything on the civil side of, has there been any movement for people like Ashley Babbitt, whose husband tragically lost her that day at the hands of really a terrified police officer that had been proven to be incompetent, who shot her? Has there been any movement in getting the January 6ers compensation?
As for Ashley Babbitt, there was a settlement with the DOJ. I believe it was $5 million. From what I understand, I'm hoping. I mean, I am hoping that there is a criminal investigation into Michael Byrd. I don't believe he received a pardon. There was a rumor that he did. It was never formally announced, but there are some lawsuits that J6ers have launched against the DOJ, which, by the way, has a lot of really bad swamp creatures still in there. To fire the whole DOJ would be quite impossible. So from what I understand, there is some bad characters still at that DOJ. But the Proud Boys filed the lawsuit, and the Department of Justice actually came back, the civil part of the Department of Justice, fighting that lawsuit. The motion was surprising, to say the least. It was written by a quote unquote playwright named His last name is Fuchs. I did a whole story on that because I was just appalled by his motion. It's basically saying that the Biden administration did nothing wrong in persecuting the Proud Boys. And this person is somebody who was there the whole time. This is a holdover from the Biden regime, I like to call it. But his response was surprising, and that might have been one of the most viral packages we did on Lindell TV. So people still care about this. I mean, there were tens of millions of shares on that package, on that little package I did on the Proud Boy lawsuit, and how the administration is actually fighting that lawsuit. So a lot of people still care about January 6th. They do feel like the J6ers need to get restitution, justice, or whatever the word you might want to say, a lawsuit, a settlement, redemption, more redemption than just a pardon. There are still people that haven't been pardoned. And like I mentioned, there are some lawsuits that are open right now against the Department of Justice by J6ers. So right now, that's something that I guess the courts will have to decide. It's a long way, I think, from that point. Motions are still being filed. I don't even think it's in a discovery phase yet, but that's something that definitely we're keeping an eye on.
So let's talk a little bit about the legal backdrop to which these cases are held. So you and I have talked about this. I've spent time talking to my friends in Congress about this, and it's really unfortunate. So in DC, we have some the most liberal activist judges of any district. And really, the district is inundated with these individuals. And so much so that the prosecutors in January 6 cases have 100% conviction rate. Some people might have been let off on this charge or that charge, but it was 100% conviction rate. They might have got off on a misdemeanor, they might have got off on a felony, but everyone was convicted. It was a turnstile into the jail. And we know that there is a tremendous amount of receptivity on the part of these judges to, or at least to the Biden administration, and now in defending the actions of the Biden administration. And so I have talked to my friends in Congress, and we need an investigation into these judges, because these cases will be summarily dismissed if they go before them. They will tilt their hat to the defending the Department of Justice. What is your opinion on what has happened in those courts, and what is your opinion on what needs to be done?
Well, I would love to see a judge get impeached. If I ever saw that, I would be, I probably could just, I'm not going to say die happy. I could retire happy, because really they are a plague. I discovered through January 6th and sitting in on about 30 trials in DC that judges are if not more, the problem, because they're supposed to be fair and they know better. They're not supposed to be political. They should have known better to let this Department of Justice, the Merrick Garland's Department of Justice, get away with what he got away with and what they got away with. They bent the law. They let the Department of Justice do things that was absolutely abhorrent, out of hand, and disgusting. And like I said, the judges should have known better. I was there during a lot of the pre-trial stuff where the defense and the prosecution would be having conversations about what could be admitted and what couldn't be admitted, and about different arguments that were going to be made. And the judges just let the prosecution get away with murder. I do believe that those judges need to be investigated. It is the most important thing I think that needs to happen in the next 3 years, that 1 or 2 judges are brought in front of Congress and asked questions about the over sentencing of January 6th, about the how they let so many people get held pre-trial on January 6th, how they bent the laws on January 6th, how more than likely they were having communications that were illegal with the Department of Justice on January 6th. We just have to, obviously the Congress has a subpoena power to find out all of these things. Hopefully they'll have the spine and the backbone to do it. I will mention this to them anytime I see a congressperson. And again, I'll talk again to some members of the January 6th committee about this, that I'm certain that there were judges that were breaking the law on January 6th when it comes to the prosecutions. There's no way, and I don't know what country this is, but I know that back in ancient times, if there's 100% conviction rate, and I don't know if you've heard this, then generally they'll exonerate the people that were convicted, because 100% means there's something shady going on. So the fact that there was almost 100% conviction rate to begin with should set off alarm bells in anybody's mind with any common sense, that the whole system was rigged, from the judges to the prosecutors to even the defense attorneys to the jury specifically. So there was a lot of shady stuff that went on during January 6th, and the judges played a tremendous part, and they just can't keep getting away with it. People have said a million times, I know that you've heard this too, that a judge has never been impeached for anything like this, but it's about time that they are. They're the most unchecked branch of government. Everybody's on top of Congress. Everybody's on top of the executive branch. Why isn't anybody questioning and holding these judges accountable? So it's just so important. And if this administration does it, no administration will ever do it. So that's something I'm fighting for very strongly, Brady.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that could be done, right? There's impeachment, but short of impeachment, if they just do a general inquiry from the Judicial Committee at what occurred in these trials and who the players are, they could at least get these judges to answer questions regarding what the potential ex parte communications, the reason that so much evidence was disallowed, or the fact that what people don't know about the discovery is there was 3 or 4 million files on the database. And what they did to the defendants is they did not answer direct discovery. They just said, look, we gave you a password so you can access the database. You got beach access to the ocean, and the fish you're looking for is out there somewhere. And so if you're a guy that has no money or a public defender, there is no way they could have spent the 10 to 20,000 hours of research it would have took to find out what evidence is pertinent to you. And so they could ask these judges questions, and they could also, after they ask them questions, when they bring cases into their court, they could ask that those judges recuse themselves due to some of these inquiries. But there is this unbelievable resistance. As they say, a district court judge has never been questioned in a congressional hearing and has never been impeached. So have you, and I know you talked to a lot of people up on Capitol Hill, is there any receptivity to doing it?
People have, they're afraid of that for whatever the reason. But I think that there's more receptivity now than there was before, especially because President Trump, in this administration at least, has really brought a lot of attention to activist judges, even though it's not pertaining to January 6th. It's the same crew of judges, the same type of judges that are trying to prevent him from doing a lot of the work that America voted for. So I think a lot more attention has been brought to these judges, to say the least. So people are a little bit more receptive to it. And I think that they shouldn't have to put 1 or 2 of these people on the bench and rather on the stand and question them, ask them questions. I think that it would be really good for the country in many ways to actually start thinking about the third branch of government, which are these judges that literally have such an effect on our daily lives that people don't even realize it. And have such an effect on the lives of Americans that are charged with crimes. Judge Beryl Howell, for example, who is the chief judge at the time, allowed the Cressman rules to be used. The Cressman rules, which basically circumvented the Bail Bond Act, I believe, I think it was 1985 or 1984, where you can't hold people in pretrial unless there's certain factors that are met. And she literally changed those for J6ers. It was unconstitutional. One of the factors was if you were wearing gear, if you were wearing a chest plate or some sort of tactical gear, which, a lot of people wore that as a costume there on J6. That means you could be held pre-trial. So you're literally changing the Constitution for one group of people, or changing the law rather from one group of people and not another. So that's unconstitutional, obviously, but that was never even talked about. It was just accepted. Nobody even brought that to the Supreme Court, which I felt like they should have. There's just so many things that could be asked of these people, especially the sentencing guidelines. I feel, and also just the pretrial was just disgusting, and what happened with that, and the discovery, like you mentioned, the avalanche dump. That's what I called it, when they would just put all this information on somebody that had a public defender and that was being literally held in a jail cell with no access to a computer or no access really to their attorneys, especially during the COVID lockdowns. The unvaccinated couldn't even meet with their attorneys. So many crazy things happened that was so lawless, and it's very scary because it could happen again, obviously, under any administration. It can happen when Trump leaves office. It can happen anytime, really, if these judges are allowed to keep doing what they're doing. I feel like they're just kind of biding their time, just waiting. And I feel there's a lot of people in Justice Department doing this as well. They're just waiting for Trump to leave so they could just come out, crawl out again from the swamp and, take down America and take down due process. Whether it's for the left or the right, it's not right. And these judges, I'll say it again and again and again, need to be held accountable once and for all. And if Trump doesn't do it, nobody's going to do it. And if this Congress doesn't do it, nobody is going to do it, because this administration is the only one that would support that.
Yeah. So I know that you probably have a deeper understanding of January 6th, probably than any other reporter. I know that you spent countless hours visiting people in jail. I know you were in contact with all the J6 researchers, and you've been reporting on this so long. Well, if you were to talk about the three biggest issues, if you had to think about it, and I had to put you on the spot, that would help bring the revelation of what actually occurred that day, and then and including the story of the prosecutions. If we were to get answers on the three biggest topics, what would they be?
I think the three biggest topics, because I'm going to say that the way that the people were politically persecuted and the actions in the courthouse were, I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle that I hope that they don't forget. I think if people understood the way that these defendants, that their fellow Americans were treated in these prosecutions, and that would be able to be illustrated in a way that the American public could understand that very simply, and that really hit home with them, that would be something that would change everything. I also think the police brutality that day, if that was really exposed, America would not be okay with that. And also, I think the death of Roseanne Boylan, so that has to do with, obviously, police brutality and possibly the amount of federal involvement in January 6th is a third piece of it. Also, yeah, I think that those three would be at the top. The pipe bomb. I mean, we don't know who the pipe bomber really was. If the real truth could come out, I do think that this is something the government will probably withhold and hide, because what I'm starting to understand is a lot of these federal agencies, it doesn't matter what administration they're with, they will cover for each other, sadly. And hopefully this administration doesn't do that. But when it comes to the pipe bomber, there's been so much information that's come out to show that basically we were lied to about the pipe bomb, and who the pipe bomber really was. It could have been an operative. And this is really what people in Congress believe. This isn't just me saying this. If that could be, again, illustrated and communicated effectively without sounding like a conspiracy theory to the American people, it's going to blow their minds, obviously, that this was something that they were lied about. And also, I could also say the Proud Boys trial, which is something that I sat through. Really, if people only knew the truth about who the Proud Boys were and how innocent they actually were, and how they could have just been your brother that was caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time, that was, interested in going to the Capitol and showing off and acting like he was a cool guy, and then all of a sudden being locked up in jail and charged with seditious conspiracy. It's something that I feel like can come out of a dark comedy. But if people only understood just how innocent some of these quote unquote seditious conspirators like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys were, it would also really, I think, turn the story upside down. Just to get to know some of these people and see that they're just regular people that were used as government pawns to take down an administration.
Yeah, I know a lot of those guys, and when you see that they were just probably just some of the most sincere protesters, and they had taken the responsibility. They felt like they needed to be at these protests to defend other folks because there was so much violence coming from the counter protesters that they felt a responsibility to be there. It's really
Right.
unfortunate that happened what happened to them. Now, I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned the federal involvement, and I don't know that people understand this yet thus far. So when they said that there were 274 FBI agents on the ground that day, and they're saying they were just there for crowd control, but we haven't seen them identified in film to see what their actions were. But those 274 come just from the Washington, D.C. field office. That doesn't include the other field offices across the country in which they had FBI informants or they were working other cases. So we still have not learned how many total FBI there were there, and we have not learned how many from DHS and the other agencies. I know William Pope discovered there were DEA agents on the ground, which makes very little sense. So what's your feel as far as the federal involvement? I mean, I know you've watched a lot of video and seen a lot of curious characters. Do you feel like it was more than the 274?
I certainly do feel that way. And like you just hit it on, you just hit it right there when you said that there were no mention of those other agents from other agencies, or even, other organizations that were working with the government. So I was there that day. I was documenting it, and there were plenty of people that my radar went off in my head. Like, this doesn't make sense. This person seems like an agent to me. There was at least 3 or 4 people I passed by that were inciting things, and that it just seemed so insincere and fake. So I do think hopefully that will come out. I do think President Trump has actually said he wanted to see the names of those people released. And the fact that they haven't been released is crazy. And the fact that they weren't released to J6 defendants, you're supposed to be able to face your accuser. Clearly, these were people that were informing the government on a lot of these people. So the fact that all of those trials should be overturned. Well, they were with the pardon, but I mean they should just be sort of the court should acknowledge the fact that they didn't let the defense attorneys even know about the existence of these federal agents, and probably so many more. Ray Epps, I hate to always go back to Ray Epps and others, but he's probably on that list. And how bad would the government look? Like, this is probably one of the reasons why I thought about this. Like, if they release the list of names, like it will even turn the lies even more upside down, because the mainstream media and the Biden administration went to bat, as you know, for Ray Epps. Oh, he's
The one guy.
literally right. And there was literally so many articles out there in mainstream media painting him as this wonderful person, when he was the one, like, everything that they found to be so bad about January 6th, like someone egging people on to go inside, is what Ray Epps did. Yet they're writing hero pieces on him in various mainstream media. So what was up with that? That was so odd. And as you know, the federal government has always leaked stuff to these organizations, like MSNBC, that they leaked Capitol riot footage to, like the New York Times. They leaked this stuff to them and they asked them for favors. So it just never made sense to me why the mainstream media was going to bat for Ray Epps. And now it makes sense. I mean, I guess maybe I'm sure he was one on the list of those federal agents. And that would that would be something that would be massive and huge, I think, if it was finally acknowledged and proven that Ray Epps was a federal asset, or at least a confidential human source, and the government denied that for 4 years. That would probably be possibly higher up on that list of 3 that you asked for, if that could be proven, and if those names were released, because I'm sure his name is in there somewhere in the mix.
Well, so you're probably familiar with this, maybe even more so than I, because I spent most of the time watching the footage that was relevant to my case. But many of the people that were the initial breachers of the police lines, and many of the people that committed some of the most egregious acts, were barefaced people. You could clearly see their faces. They never ended up on the most wanted list. They were never charged. They were never arrested, and they were never identified. So we have a tremendous amount of people that we don't know if they were federal agents. We don't know if they were bad actors, agent provocateurs. But do you think that there is potential with this new committee, that there is a deep dive into the actual instigators of January 6th?
Look, I hope so, and I'll let you know as I find out more. That would be something that they should look into. So you're right when you say that there were a lot of people. It's very interesting because I did watch a lot of the videos that I was shocked never showed up on these wanted lists, and how selective they were with the people that they prosecuted and went after. But like you mentioned, there were people with full faces showing, and even people wearing masks. There was a couple individuals that probably could have been identified, but they chose not to, or they, in the very least, didn't put them on the wanted list. There was two individuals I could think of that were really one of the main characters that broke in through the windows of the Capitol that never ever appeared on a wanted list. So that was always very shady to me. That is something I could suggest, and I think something that they should look into. But they have to subpoena these records, I guess, from the FBI, and who knows where they are on some of the names of these people. And they have to put a lot of work in, a lot of they, and I think they should rely on a lot of the work of the people who have already done this work for the past 4 years. These people are identified by a lot of journalists. Generally a lot of citizen journalists. You had the sedition hunters, quote unquote, helping the Biden administration figure out which J6ers to arrest. I think that this administration should rely on help from Trump supporters who really just want to see justice in identifying who was there that day that could have been a nefarious actor.
Yeah, you raise a good point. I mean, they were very receptive and sympathetic to the people searching for J6 defendants. Why can't they be equally as sympathetic to those people that have potentially identified agent provocateurs and federal assets in the crowd? So, hey, I don't know if people know this about you, but you're a champion boxer, right? So you actually know how to kick ass and beat ass. So I think it's funny that I hope the other reporters on the ground learn this so that maybe they don't bump shoulders against you. I mean, that would be funny. I mean, in my own, I don't advocate for violence, but if there was violence, I would like to see like a CNN reporter laid out. If you ever have to do it, please make sure it's from CNN.
Okay, well, yeah, they've caught wind of that actually, and I do feel like people are nicer to me since they found that out. Somebody, I didn't tell anybody, but somebody did, and then everybody, comes up to me now. They're like, "Oh, I heard you were a champion boxer," and I do feel like I get a little bit more respect from, especially like the camera crews and stuff like that who watch actual sports. Yes, so that is something that I have here at the White House. I think that really helps me, Brady, because it is, like I said, it can get pretty hostile here. People do elbow, people do shove, people use ladders as literal weapons to knock people out of the way. It gets pretty bad. So it is somewhat of a physical job, and that's the truth. Like, I mean, when President Trump comes along, everybody makes a run, a beeline to get closer to him. You have to be fast. You have to be quick. You have to be elusive. You have to be able to crawl under ladders and, pop up like right in the right little spot, almost like football, like find the hole. So yeah, it's really something that you have to be slightly athletic to do. And I really mean that.
Yeah. So, where are you seated when you're inside? I know, like, you see Caitlin Collins all the time. Where are you seated in the press room?
Well, we don't have a seat. So the press room is run by this is traditionally run by the White House Correspondents Association, which is pretty much a organized body of mainstream media. Even though they shockingly let me join, I don't have a vote, can't vote on it. So those seats are pretty much decided by the board of the White House Correspondents Association. Generally, that would be CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and such. And they basically put their own people in those seats. The whole entire front row is mainstream media. The second row is probably all the publications like the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, and whatnot. And there's only 40 seats, I believe. There's 40 seats. So those are assigned seats, and they keep those assignments for years. I do believe that they're readjusting the seats at the end of this year. It is coming up. I'm going to apply for a seat. We'll see what happens. You never know. But as of right now, if you're new media, or even if you're not just one of like these really big major media companies, it's first come, first serve when it comes to getting a place in the briefing room, and you don't have a seat. You have to stand.
Yeah, so I find it interesting that you have all these reporters from the legacy media that have really just been, often they're given a softball position, and a lot of those people are just camera friendly, and they haven't had to fight the same way that the new media has for their story. And like yourself, you're an actual fighter. You know what the struggle is, and you have that in you. I feel like that from the questions that I've been hearing from the press corps in general, it seems like that you guys kind of have a character advantage over a lot of the legacy media, because you guys have had to crash, kick, scream, and crawl to get where you're at. Do you feel that there is a much difference in the personality of the new media than of the legacy media?
I do, and I like that character advantage. I like it. I do feel like the new media has a character advantage, and I do know a lot of new media people here that, like you mentioned, fought their way to the top. It wasn't handed to them. They don't get their questions sent to them. They don't have, like, a lot of these legacy media people. They walk into the briefing room a minute before it starts. They don't have to stand and hold a spot for 4 hours, which it does build character, even though it's very annoying. I gotta say, but it does make you want to get your question in more. It makes you a little bit more aggressive. It does give you an edge in the end, I think, certainly. So yes, I have noticed that a lot of the journalists here, whether it be there's a journalist, say, from Tim Pool Podcast, there's a journalist from Real America's Voice, OAN, Daily Caller, just the Gateway Pundit, everybody has a journalist here, and those journalists happen to be some of the better ones, some of the ones that actually investigate their own stories, some of the ones that actually fight to get sources that aren't just handed to them. They're not just handed to them by the networks. So overall, I think those are the journalists that will probably succeed more so now that there's this new media realm. It just might take a couple years, I think, for it all to level out. But that you brought up a really good point with that, and I like that analogy that you used. But it's totally true. Those reporters have a lot more character, for sure.
So now that you've started to develop a relationship with some of these more, I guess, instituted and established reporters, how much, see, you can go in and you can ask whatever question you want. How much of a leash do they have? Do you feel like that they are kind of a representative of a machine, and are they a truly investigative journalist? Are they there to speak on behalf or advocate for an agenda in which they represent?
Well, sadly, a lot of them are really nice people, because you get to know people on a personal level, and probably wish they could tell the truth, but they are obviously controlled by massive corporations and special interests, and pharmaceutical companies, or whoever it is that they're beholden to, and they're just an arm or a cog in the machine, sadly, for these giant corporations. I'm sure if left to their own devices, and one day it was just field day here at the White House, and nobody had a corporation that they worked for, and they're like, ask whatever question you want. Those questions would be really different if they actually had to sit down and think it to themselves, like I do. Like, what do I want to ask, and how can I ask it? What is a real question that I think is important, rather than what the network wants them to ask that they work for, because they do work for these massive corporations. The questions would be totally different. So it's almost gotten to a point where I actually feel sorry for them to a certain extent, because they are just regular people that have jobs, that don't want to lose their jobs, and that have absolutely really no choice in the matter when it comes to the narrative that they're going with, because that's the network narrative, and they're beholden to it. So it's unfortunate and it's sad, because they are good people. I really mean that. And like I said, if they weren't working for these corporations, maybe they would be asking different questions.
Yeah. Hey, is there someone else broadcasting over there?
Yeah, right next to me.
Tell him you're going to kick his ass. Shut up, dude. Shut up.
I think he's from Italy, or I'm listening, maybe Germany. I don't know. But it gets crowded here. I have a guy right next to me. And then right here is Fox Business. They're usually pretty loud, but they're not here right now. They should be here shortly, but we share this very tight space. The White House is smaller, Brady. You'd be surprised. That briefing room reminds me of a submarine. This White House was built obviously a long time ago, when I think people were smaller, when there weren't massive cameras that had to be fit into the room. So it's a tight squeeze. I think that was the thing that surprised me the most, was wow, this is this is it, because this briefing room was built so long ago. There were no cameras back then, so now we're trying to fit all of our equipment into there with people too, and it's really a tight squeeze. And right now I'm in a little area, you can't see it, where there's about 10 news cameras set up around me, just from different networks. So
Yeah.
it's difficult sometimes.
So where can people find you?
Go find me obviously on Lindell TV. If you don't know Mike Lindell, you should find out more about him. He died on, a hill, obviously, but he's making a comeback like so many of us, like you, like me, Brady, ever since President Trump came back into office. So go on lindelltv.com. And we're making big waves here in Washington, D.C. We're starting to go viral with a lot of the stuff that we do, whether it's our reporter at Congress or here at the White House and the questions that we're asking. So please follow us on Lindell TV, where we have full coverage all day long of Washington, D.C. and everything going on at the White House. And we even go on the streets and talk to people. We go to protests. We do everything. So also follow Lindell TV on X, on all social media platforms, as well as me at Cara Castronuova on X. Follow me, and also check out the Gateway Pundit. I still write for the Gateway Pundit, a great publication as well. So that's where you can find me.
Hey, thank you so much. And we'll probably have you back as this committee develops, if you don't mind, and if you could just keep us up on what is happening in these cases, because I feel like it's so important to the national conversation when we see that basically the two biggest conspiracies in the history of the country happened during the last administration. We had COVID and we had January 6th. And I know those are intimately important issues to you. And as you learn more, please come back and share it with us.
I will. Thank you so much, Brady, and God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you, Cara.